the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem, one of the most magnificent buildings of antiquity. The Bible says it was the holiest place on earth for Jews, the home of the Ark of the Covenant. But there is no proof that Solomon's temple ever existed. Not a single archaeological ruin has ever been found. Until now. One of the most extraordinary artifacts ever discovered has recently come to light. It's called the Joash tablet. It could be the only surviving evidence of the Temple of Solomon.
We are talking about one of the most important antiquities ever found.
But for some, the inscription is nothing more than a cunning forgery.
They are a construct, something which was man-made.
It sparked a nationwide manhunt and the largest fraud trial in Israel's history. This is a story that even Hollywood couldn't make up.
There are spies involved, there are billionaire collectors and shady characters.
It's not a simple archaeology story. It wasn't even a simple crime story. It's a story in real life that looks like a movie.
This is the incredible true story of the tablet of King Solomon's temple.
Either it's genuine or it's a very brilliant forgery.
Israel, July 2001. In Jerusalem, a clandestine meeting is about to take place. A mysterious gentleman called Itzhak Surreal has asked to meet the director of the Israel Museum.
The story that was told was of this very mysterious encounter between a man who used to work for the Israeli Secret Service turning up with a briefcase, like some kind of cloak and dagger mystery.
At the meeting, Mr. Surreal produces what appears to be an ancient stone tablet. It has an inscription written in ancient Hebrew.
This object had to do with Solomon and the first temple. And of course, that is huge in Israel.
The 15 lines describe building repairs made by a king of Judah called Joash. The inscription matches exactly the Bible's account of repairs carried out on the temple.
As all other buildings, they fall in disrepair if you don't maintain them. And so it was necessary when King Joash became king at the age of 6 to start repairing the temple.
If genuine, it could be the only proof of the fabled Temple of King Solomon. In 957 BC, King Solomon, son of King David, inaugurates the Holy Temple. The Bible describes it as a magnificent building. In size and beauty, it was unrivaled in the ancient world. Its outside walls were made of white stone, rising 45 feet high and stretching 29 feet wide. Its dimensions based on divine symmetry.
The first temple was intended to be a sight to behold. Indeed, as all temples were in the ancient world, they were meant to be both holy places, but because of that, awe-inspiring.
Inside, its walls and floors were lined with sweet-scented cedar wood, richly decorated with carved flowers, and palm trees and figures of angels all overlaid with sheets of pure gold. At the rear, 2 golden angels stretched their wings across the most sacred inner room of the temple, the Holy of Holies. It housed the Ark of the Covenant.
It would have been, almost certainly, with the exception of a king's palace, the most beautiful, most opulent, and expensive building anyone would ever see.
For 400 years, Solomon's temple stood as a marvel of the ancient world. But in 587 BC, the Babylonians invade Jerusalem and destroy the temple. They set fire to its beautifully gilded walls and burn it to the ground. No one knows if Solomon's temple really existed. Jews believe it stood on the Temple Mount, one of the most contested turfs on the planet.
It is agreed that the location of the first temple would be on what's known as the Temple Mount, upon which now the Al-Aqsa Mosque stands, therefore an area that's not able to be excavated. And so what lies below is really left to the imagination.
As a result, no physical evidence has ever been found of King Solomon's magnificent temple. But if the tablet in Mr. Surreal's possession is authentic, it would be proof for the existence of the first temple.
So this would have taken, I think, the main object in the Israel Museum, object of the year, the object of the decade, of the century.
It is the only known remnant of Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. And therefore, as far as Israel and the Jewish people are concerned, it is possibly the most important archaeological artifact yet found.
But before the Israel Museum would consider buying the item, they'd have to make sure it's genuine. They want to know where it was found.
Some said it had been found in the area known as Solomon's Stables on the Temple Mount. There was another story that it had been found buried in the Muslim cemetery just outside the old city walls. There were lots and lots of rumors going around, but nobody really knew.
Failure to establish the provenance of the stone is a major problem for the Israel Museum. They bide their time and sit on the story. In January 2003, news breaks of the tablet's existence. For 2 years, the Israel Museum has kept the lid on the story firmly shut. But now, somehow, it's out.
They announced that this tablet was doing the rounds, had been spotted, but nobody knew where it was or who owned it.
Neither the Israel Museum nor Itzhak Surreal break their silence. All the paper says is the tablet has been authenticated by scientists at the Geological Survey of Israel and is up for sale. The asking price is reputed to start at $4 million. The headlines catch the attention of the IAA, the Israel Antiquities Authority, a government body set up to protect antiquities.
The IAA has a robbery prevention unit that is run by what I called scholar cops. Many of them have studied archaeology, but they're also authorized to carry guns and to arrest people.
The chief detective in charge of the robbery prevention unit is Amir Ganor.
He's a soldier. He served in Lebanon, and he's a very big man. He carries a weapon, but he also has a great deal of respect for ancient history.
He spends several nights a week staking out ancient tombs in the West Bank, waiting for grave robbers to come along and dig up ancient treasures that they can sell on the black market.
They're doing a lot of efforts to catch people without almost any success. We're talking about the department of the IAA. This is normally running after a Bedouin here and a Bedouin there, and somebody who took, 2 oil lamps and 2 coins.
In January 2003, Chief Ganor receives a phone call. Find the Jehoash tablet and its owner.
This issue came to the top people in Israel when it published in the newspapers. The Minister of Education, who was responsible, actually pushed the Israel Antiquity Authority to find this antiquity, because everyone said that if it's authentic, it should not be out of the country.
Chief Ganor rounds up his staff and forms a task force.
This search for the tablet from the Temple of Solomon was given top priority. This was almost the most important thing that had ever been given to do. A direct order from the minister is not an everyday occurrence, so they dropped everything and they teamed up with the Israeli police, who put their resources into it as well, to try and track down this missing item.
The team are told to press and grill every contact and dealer. No academic, museum conservator, or private collector is spared interrogation.
To try and find this tablet, the police cast this very wide net and started talking to all their sources and all their contacts in the antiquities trade.
As his team gets on with the job, Chief Ganor decides to make his own inquiries. He asks the reporter who ran the story, but he refuses to play ball. But the reporter did quote scientists at the Geological Survey of Israel. The article says they authenticated the tablet. Maybe they can give Ganor a lead. The detective visits the Geological Survey of Israel. They house some of the world's top experts in geochemistry and geology. Ganor learns that several months earlier, they had received a mysterious visitor. His name was Itzhak Surya. Ganor had never heard of the man.
A gentleman, very, secret, like James Bond, at least. He came to the head of the Geological Survey and told him that he has a very unique artifact, and he wanted that the Geological Survey will test if it is genuine. I was astonished because I know to read ancient Hebrew script, and I started to read it. And on the spot, I saw this something very unique.
To determine the tablet's authenticity, the scientists look into the stone's patina, a thin layer of crust that forms on the stone's surface over time. But patina can be faked, so they also check for modern traces in the stone crust.
For instance, if you find teeny particles of plastic, well, you see, this patina is not genuine. We couldn't find any of such.
In fact, what they find is an even coat of patina or aging everywhere. The question is, how old is it? They spot particles that can determine the age of the tablet.
We found particles of the charcoal, which was very important for us to examine the age.
The GSI sends the charcoal to a lab for analysis. They date it between 390 to 200 BC. Clearly, the tablet is very old. But is it from Solomon's temple? Because patina takes centuries to form, the lab results place the tablet's creation prior to 500 BC. Close to the temple's fiery destruction by the Babylonians in 587 BC. It's tantalizing but inconclusive evidence. The charcoal could be from any fire. However, the geologists also find traces of another particle.
We found some curious things, such as the gold particles. The gold particles are within a very unique range, about 1 to 2 microns, which is very, very teeny. And this is very strange.
Solomon's temple's walls were lined with gold, and it was incinerated. So one might imagine that bits of gold would have been flying around in the air and sort of found their way into this sandstone tablet.
The scientists at the Geological Survey of Israel tell Surreal that in their view the tablet is not a modern forgery.
At the end, we made a report. We say that we didn't find any clue that this is a modern forgery.
And with that, as mysteriously as Mr. Surreal had arrived, he was gone.
He was a secret, very secret here. We tried to call him later after he got the report. Nothing. We couldn't reach him.
The geologists provide Ganor with a description of the man, his business card, and a letter with a logo and a phone number, but nothing checked out. Mr. Surreal is turning out to be a ghost. But the detective soon catches a lucky break.
The story of how Amir Ganor tracked down the mysterious Surreal is like something straight out of a spy novel. In fact, it involves a real spy.
Tel Aviv, famous for its sun, sea, and sand, but also its spies. It's the headquarters of the Israeli spy agency, the Shin Bet. After weeks of chasing dead ends, Amir Ganor finds a slender lead. An informant reveals that Surreal is a former spy for Shin Bet. They still can't find him, but now they know someone who might.
Through a little bit more digging, they found somebody who was associated with him coming into the airport in Tel Aviv one night.
An alert is immediately sent to seize the suspect at Tel Aviv airport.
So they set up a sting and they caught him and they brought him into a room and they opened his luggage and they found that it was filled with eavesdropping equipment.
Under questioning, the man denies all knowledge of the tablet or Mr. Surreal. But Ganor has just the leverage to make the man talk.
Somehow in the process of researching this gentleman, they found out that he had a mistress. And so when he walked in, they said, we're here to speak with you about the tablet, and he didn't want to. And then they told him that they had some compromising information about his personal life. And he immediately changed his tune and said, well, I have to get on a plane to go to Paris, and let's do this right now. I'll talk to you.
The man agrees to talk.
He led them to another gentleman who also was former Shin Bet, who they then thought might be Mr. Surreal. So they went to that gentleman's office on the outskirts of Tel Aviv. As they walked in, they saw the secretary taking reams of documents and stuffing them into the shredder. So they waited for this man to come along.
Their patience is rewarded. Before long, the real Mr. Surreal shows up at the office.
So he sat down and he told them that he was Mr. Surreal, that he had met with the Israel Museum, that he had taken the tablet over to the GSI, and that he had been instructed in all this by a gentleman named Oded Golan.
Okay, let's start again.
Oded Golan was a name that Amir Ganor recognized instantly. Amir Ganor had already encountered Oded Golan on numerous occasions. He was one of the major collectors of ancient objects in Tel Aviv. We also knew about him because Oded Golan was the owner of something called the James Ossuary.
Just 3 months earlier, the James Ossuary made headlines across the world. It's a stone burial box dating to the 1st century AD. On its side reads the inscription, James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus. If authentic, it could be the first evidence for the existence of Christ. Unsurprisingly, its announcement was met with both amazement and suspicion in equal measure.
As soon as the Antiquities Authority people realized that both of these very important, but at the same time very suspicious items were in the hands of one man, one, the only item ever recovered from the family of Jesus, and two, the only item ever recovered from Solomon's temple, that led them inexorably to the conclusion that there must be something dodgy going on here.
Amir Ganor now has a prime suspect. He immediately issues a warrant to search Golan's premises. Meanwhile, a professor at Tel Aviv University reevaluates the GSI report on the tablet. Professor Goran is quick to make up his mind.
The very first scientific comment on the Joash tablet outside of the Geological Survey was by Yuval Goran of Tel Aviv University, who became the lead expert for the Israel Antiquities Authority. And in his first comments about it, without even having seen it, he had denounced it as a fake.
The idea that it was flecked with gold seemed just too perfect for him, because that so matches the Bible. He had this kind of theory about how somebody might create it using ancient charcoal from sites around Israel, and earth, and gold. So there was a way to fool science if you pulled all of these things together.
Goran argues that the traces of gold could have been sprayed using a gas burner. As for the patina, rock dust mixed with ancient materials could have been given an ultrasonic bath, applied to the tablet, and then left to dry.
There is no doubt that there are forgery workshops here in Israel, in Palestine, creating fake antiquities, where people take items, make them, bury them in the ground, try and put on them a false patina, and they sell them to antiquities collectors around the world.
Yuval Goran felt that, looking at it, that's what it was. It was a man-made object through and through.
In Professor Goran's expert opinion, the JOS tablet is a fake. By the time Goran publishes his report on the tablet, Detective Ganor is closing in on his man. Tel Aviv, late January 2003. Amir Ganor secures a warrant to search Golan's premises. Within hours, at 7 p.m., agents of the Israeli Antiquities Authority and the Israeli police are in place. Agents search Golan's warehouse, his office, and even his apartment.
When they searched for the Josh tablet, they came to my house, I think something like 12 people, mostly police and IAA people. They went to my office, my storage houses, any place that they could imagine that it can be found.
They find a letter from Golan to the Israel Museum about the tablet. Receipts from Mr. Surreal, and even pictures of the JOS tablet. But as for the tablet itself, not a trace.
The different raids on Oded Golan's house and his warehouses and his offices uncovered all sorts of things, but not the JOS tablet.
Ganor is getting desperate. He gathers all the compromising evidence and arrests Golan on a questionable charge of holding stolen property. Usually, it's only the small fry that Ganor nets. But this time, it's the big one. Golan is interrogated. Not once, but every day. Week after week. But Golan protests his innocence.
Oded Golan denies that he has anything to do with this tablet. They spend a month hauling this man in and questioning him, and he doesn't break.
To give a lot of pressure, they took hundreds of antiquities from me. And they claim that if I don't tell them what I know about the Josh tablet, they will not give it back to me, my own collection that I collected for dozens of years. And of course it was not pleasant.
For 2 months, Golan is brought in every day for interrogation. And still, not a pipsqueak. Maybe he is innocent, after all. Frustrated, Ganor tries a different tack. He assigns officers to track Golan's every move when he's not in custody. Heavy surveillance goes on for several weeks. Eventually, they spot something. In a district of East Tel Aviv called Ramat Gan, they discover that Golan has another warehouse. Here, they hit the mother lode.
They break into this room, and what they find is extremely interesting and incriminating.
They uncovered tools and half-finished items.
They find photographs of objects, photographs of letters that have been copied out of books.
And casts and computer programs and sketches.
They find work tools like diamond cutters and knives and industrial design tools.
And even soil in different bags labeled from different archaeological digs.
Ganor is sure the tablet must be here somewhere. They discover laboratory equipment packed up in boxes. They even find half-finished antiques. But still no tablet.
They thought they were just looking for missing items. But Amir Ganor says that he turned around in the middle of this search and suddenly realized that what they were looking at was not an antiquities collection, but an antiquities forgery workshop.
Once again, the collector is arrested. This time on suspicion of fraud.
Suddenly, he's the subject of an investigation that has him as a master forger of antiquities. He was locked up for a month, subject to lengthy interrogation. His life has changed overnight from being quite an important and leading member of Israel's cultural elite to being a criminal.
But Galan has a very simple explanation for his workshop.
They're very, very, very simple machines in which you restore antiquities. When I was younger, I used to restore, almost every collector restore by himself some of the antiquities. And you're talking about something that everyone can buy in any shop. You cannot make neither the Jewish tablet nor any one of the other antiquities that's suspicious that they are new with these materials.
But Ganor keeps up the pressure. Galan is proving to be a formidable adversary and tougher to crack than the Shin Bet spies. Eventually, and for the first time, Galan admits he knows something. In fact, he knows a great deal about the tablet.
They asked me if I hold the Jewish tablet. I told them that I know many things about the Jewish tablet, that I am the person actually who was involved in showing it to the Israel Museum, but I don't hold it presently. That's what I told them. I had it actually in a hidden place, but I was afraid that they are going to confiscate it. So I told them almost everything that I could tell them, except the fact that I hold it in my hand.
Ganor's pressure pays off. Galan at last admits a connection with the tablet. But Ganor still hasn't achieved his primary objective: to locate and recover the Jewish tablet. The search for the tablet is turning into a game of cat and mouse. Ganor decides to make things personal. He issues a search warrant for the home of Galan's parents.
Part of the game, if I can put it in this way, was to put a lot of pressure on me. They came to my parents, and not just like that. They came at 3 o'clock in the morning, if I'm not wrong, about that time. You know, everything had its own effect.
And they're in the parents' house with Oded Golan, and the elderly parents are sitting there on the couch, and Amir Ganor feels very bad about this because they're elderly and frail. And he's looking at Oded Golan and he's thinking, when is this man going to break? Because his Clearly he loves his parents, and this is not a good thing for the parents.
The way Oded describes it is that the straw that broke his back was when the police actually raided his parents' home and started going through his parents' apartment room by room.
And they move through the apartment, and as they get to the parents' bedroom and start to get ready to tear it up, Oded Golan suddenly breaks and says, okay, I want my lawyer and I'll talk to you about this.
In the early hours of the morning, Golan finally breaks.
They promised me that if I give the stone to the government, they will not take me into court in any case.
Two days later, true to his word, Golan delivers the Jehoash tablet. The detective has finally got the artifact that could either prove the existence of Solomon's temple or prove to be an elaborate forgery. A press conference is immediately held to announce the tablet's discovery.
Well, they're all in one room. Everybody's just so excited to see it because, nobody's immune to the significance of this thing.
But the excitement soon gives way to horror.
Somebody picked it up and bobbled it, and it fell onto the table and cracked in half, to their utter horror. And they had to go forth and hold a press conference with this object of enormous importance that had just broken in half.
The tablet had broken along a pre-existing hairline crack.
So Gnor's reaction to this was a kind of hysterical laughter. And he turned to his buddy and said, well, at least we can analyze it from the inside now.
A scientific commission is quickly appointed to carry out more tests on the Jehoash tablet. Their conclusion is unanimous. The inscription is a modern forgery. Amir Ganor has successfully tracked down the Jehoash tablet and its owner. But as the handcuffs are slapped on and formal charges made, it's not just Golan who's about to go on trial. So too is archaeology, science, and the very existence of the Temple of Solomon. In December 2004, accompanied by great fanfare in the local and international media, a bill of indictment is filed by the IAA and the State of Israel against Golan and 4 antiquities dealers. Among the charges are 18 counts of fraud, receiving money through deception, damaging antiquities, and violations of Israeli law of antiquities.
The extent of the forgeries is worldwide. Many different places, many different museums, many antiquity sellers the world over. We're talking about a fraud that was done at a very high level, a very professional level. Theoretically, we're talking about many, many, many years in prison should these people be found guilty.
The Israeli police, when they presented this case, they said that this was the tip of the iceberg of an international forgery ring that had placed priceless items in museums throughout the world, and that those museums were now examining their collections and coming to the Israeli police with items so that they could test them, so that they could see if they could be traced back to this forgery ring headed by Oded Golan.
If he was the forger, he would have to have a great deal of knowledge, because I already knew that if this was a forgery, it was brilliant.
September 2005. In a Jerusalem courtroom, science and scripture converge. In the largest antiquities fraud trial in Israel's history. Witness after witness argue over the relic's authenticity.
And so we had this battle between the greatest minds on earth in all these different subjects and sciences, disagreeing with each other.
The prosecution sets up 2 panels to provide expert testimony on the tablet. A panel of epigraphers, or experts in inscriptions, analyzes the authenticity of the tablet's writing.
I belonged to the inscription committee. I said that I believe that it seems to me authentic. There's nothing to indicate to me that it was the other way.
Yes, the lines are different.
Then it turned out that I'm in minority vote. I'm the only one who said for, all the others said nay.
I am not completely certain that it is not a forgery. I don't think that the inscription can be proven to be a forgery. And if it is a forgery, it's a most brilliant one.
It soon becomes obvious. The scholars' opinions are split straight down the middle.
This scholar says, this sentence doesn't sound like something from the 8th century. And another scholar comes along and says, well, actually, yes, there is another sentence like it in the 8th century. And one archaeologist got up and showed an inscription that had 3 different forms of letters written at the same time in 3 different lines on the same inscription. So all this business about the shapes of the letters show it's this century or that century, it wasn't really terribly conclusive.
The court then turns to the second panel of experts in materials. Their task is to assess the age of the tablet. The case for the prosecution is led by Yuval Goren, the Tel Aviv professor who had already denounced it as a fake. Goren tries to show that there is no ancient patina. But Professor Goren's presentation is easily picked apart by the defense.
And then the defense counsel for Oded Golan got up and went and pointed at the projection on the wall and said, isn't that patina there in one of the letters? And Yuval Goren said, oh. And it was patina in one of the letters. And Yuval Goren had to change his testimony because in one of the letters where he'd said there was no patina, in the projection right there on the wall, you could see that there was.
Stalemate again. But then, an unexpected opportunity to forge a consensus. The IAA's accidental breakage of the tablet.
Here we were lucky because the stone was broken into 2. And then we could see hidden information that nobody could even imagine to imitate.
Some patina had clearly grown into the ancient hairline crack. Surely, far beyond the reach of a forger's tools.
The crack is filled with patina, the same patina that covers the surface of the tablet and also within the letters. I think if there is a forger, he's a genius.
It should be conclusive proof that the tablet is not a forgery. But amazingly, the scholars still cannot agree.
And several times during the trial, the judge, who himself was no slouch and was a very, very bright man, turned to these expert professor witnesses and said, if you, the greatest experts in the world, can't agree between yourselves on whether or not these things are forged, how am I supposed to decide?
Years go by. Eventually, the fate of Golan and of the Joash tablet rests upon one man's verdict. Judge Farkash. In March 2012, after 8 years, 116 hearings, 138 witnesses, and 12,000 pages of transcripts, Judge Farkash delivers his verdict. Golan is acquitted of all major charges against him.
The judge's verdict says that the prosecution failed to prove that the Joash tablet was faked, and they failed to prove that Oded Golan had any role in forgery.
I am glad that I was found innocent for all the very serious allegations that I had to face.
The judge did not rule that these objects are real. He ruled that they hadn't been proven to be forgeries.
Golan's acquittal is a devastating blow for the IAA. But even more disconcerting is the IAA's reaction to the verdict. In an embarrassing U-turn, they refuse to return the tablet to Golan.
After the acquittal, the IAA did a sort of a 180 in terms of the value of these objects. And as they had been holding the ossuary and the tablet throughout the trial and not giving them back to Oded Golan because they were under suspicion of being forgeries, now they're keeping them because they could be real.
Judge Farkash, in his verdict, had specifically warned the Antiquities Authority, you're not going to be able to do this. But that's exactly what they tried to say. And the Israeli appeals court, to their credit, actually, threw that out completely.
Two years later, in May 2014, the IAA's appeal is overruled, and the tablet returned to its rightful owner.
I got a letter, a very strange letter from the IAA, not even from the IAA itself. They went to a private lawyer, they sent a letter to my lawyer, and they say, the IAA will not refuse if Mr. Golan come and collect his piece. That was the wording of the letter.
So, a decade on from his first denunciation as a forger and a master criminal, Oded Golan very quietly, without any ceremony, without any public announcement from the Israel Antiquities Authority, finally gets the Joash tablet back in his hands.
Today, Oded Golan continues to add to his collection and intends to display the Joash tablet to the public.
But I think that I succeeded somehow, to overcome most of the difficulties, but yet I could not renew my company. It's a loss of millions of dollars. We are living in a world that I looked at it in some sort of an accident, that in life you can never know what you can expect, for good and for bad.
Oded has managed to clear his name, but the jury's still out on whether the tablet is a forgery or the real thing. If fake, a group of highly skilled craftsmen with a combined scholarly knowledge far beyond the scope of modern forgery engraved the sandstone tablet, planted fake material on it, and tried to pass it off as an ancient artifact. But if it is real, it could be the incredible evidence that proves the existence of King Solomon's temple.